I'll now call back to order the regular meeting of the Lake Forest Community High School Board of Education meeting for February 11th, 2019. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lane? Dr. Nemekis?
Here.
Mr. Markison?
Here.
Mrs. Kreiling?
Here.
Mr. Mormon?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Dr. Elliott?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll be real brief. We have a couple of reports tonight. We're going to hear a report tonight on where Lake Forest High School students go after they graduate from high school, and a little on how they're doing. I think it's important to preface this report by saying where you go to college and what you do right after college isn't the most important decision of your life. Easy for me to say because I'm not stressed about applying to college, but hear me out. I read an article about the college application process written by someone that studied the process and, more importantly, the applicants. What the writer learned was that the talents and ambitions of individual applicants, the students, are more important than the resources and renown of elite schools. Or, more importantly, what our students are learning right now in high school, resilience, hard work, compassion, the person they are becoming now at 18 is a better predictor of future success than the school they graduate from at 22. That sounds so obvious, but it's easy to forget that because we don't track everything like colleges track and report rejection rates. Some of the wisest people I know, and probably some of the wisest people you all ever knew, as a boy, the ones that shaped my life, didn't go to college at all. The best lawyer I ever met did his undergrad at the University of Wisconsin. He's also a Packer fan, which proves everyone makes mistakes. The best doctor I know got her undergrad degree in English from the University of Illinois. What this writer learned was that young adults should stress out about their habits and chill about college. Individual characteristics swamp institutional characteristics, and it's more important to be hardworking and curious than to receive a certain thick envelope. We're also going to hear about the importance of extracurriculars at Lake Forest High School. I heard a great term, new-collar skills. Those are the skills that are going to be important for the next generation of leaders. Those skills include an entrepreneurial mindset, critical curiosity, team-building talents, design and innovation skills, a commitment to change versus accepting the status quo as good enough, and a bias toward change. One can learn these in class, but I believe to really hone these new-collar skills, our kids need to get involved in clubs, sports, and the arts after school. There, stumbles are inevitable and don't go on your transcript. And you'll learn that failure sucks, but it's merely a moment in time meant to teach and not define you. That's why Lake Forest High School has all the big school programs in a small school environment. That's a major non-negotiable milestone for us. So let's get on with the meeting. Mike?
Well said, Mr. Markison. I'll hand off to Dr. Holland.
And JD will start us off with the student report.
Good evening, everyone. It has been very busy at LFHS since our last meeting. Since then, LFHS has hosted its second annual Scout Experience Night, where incoming freshmen were able to come and speak with coaches, teachers, and club members. Lindsay Folker, the Spirit Chairman, and I also gave a speech on what it means to be a Lake Forest Scout. In more recent news, over the weekend, we hosted our annual Winter Formal, also known as Turnabout, and I'm happy to say that that was a massive success. 2 weeks ago, I was able to host the first session of Ask the President. This event, being a part of Student Council's new communication initiative, provided students with the opportunity to come to me during any of their lunches with comments, questions, or concerns that they may have about LFHS. I had so many students come and speak with me, and I had a laundry list of items that I brought forth to Dr. Holland last week. And I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks, we can host another session and make LFHS an even better place than it already is. This week, I will also be having a discussion with various club heads as a part of our new inclusion initiative. The goal of this is to make LFHS a safer and more comfortable space for everyone. Next week, there will be the annual talent show. Everyone from performers, APT volunteers, even the new media students that have been filming have worked so hard. It will be showcasing some very talented students, and it should be amazing to watch, so everyone should come.
Just want to remind everyone that the talent show is an APT fundraiser. So we're hoping that everyone can come out. There's a discounted price for students, and there's a lot in store for everyone. Additionally, I've appreciated collaborating with JD around the needs and the ideas that students have. So I do want to encourage everyone, if there are ideas that you have, please go to JD's sessions. He brings all of the information back, and we truly partner and problem solve together, so thank you for that. We did have a large turnout for Turnabout, probably one of the highest numbers we've had, and all the way up till the close, there were students. I was working in co-check, so I know who was still there. There were a lot of students who stayed the entire time, which was great to see and experience. Information, we sent out a survey regarding feedback regarding first semester exams to parents, teachers, and to students, but we realized based on the response or the absence of responses from students that something must have happened. And we realized that the survey, there was a glitch in constant contact, and we had to fix that. So the survey had to be, we resent the survey to students. And so I want to encourage students out there, you should have received a link today to the survey. I apologize about our first attempt. But please provide the feedback. I'm hoping in my next principal's report and the next board meeting to provide a summary of the feedback from all stakeholder groups. So students, please complete that. And I am impressed by the amount of teachers and parents who have already completed the survey. Some information went out to the community regarding making up our emergency days and the remainder of the year. Please read that information closely. I want to encourage everyone and remind everyone, we create the calendar 2 years in advance. That's our process, and we partner with District 67 and 65 around the creation of the calendar. As we've experienced this year in planning for the calendar next year, we've had to make some revisions. So at times, the district will decide based on changes with the state or other things that come up that we have to make some changes. But the calendar that's being presented tonight is 2 years out from today. Either way, I want to encourage everyone to pay attention to our emergency days. I feel like we've done a great job with embedding emergency days into the calendar. This year was a surprise for all of us that we actually even had 1 snow day, let alone 5. Please make your plans after the emergency days. Please do not assume that we won't need to use them. And so I just wanted to remind everyone of that, especially as we discuss the calendar tonight for 2020-21. And that's it. Thank you.
So part 3 of the superintendent's report, I want to talk briefly about snow and cold days. We have had unusually cold weather in the recent past, and a number of parents were asking, so how does that all happen? There's a pretty straightforward guideline when it comes to cold. If it is wind chill warning, that means that skin is going to freeze in 10 minutes or less, and we will very likely not be having school if you hear that. If you hear warning or advisory, we very likely will have school. The way that these decisions get made is superintendents in the region all get together, sometimes in the early morning hours and sometimes in the evening hours, and discuss what they plan on doing. And so generally speaking, if one district closes, everybody closes. So the difference between the warning and the advisory basically is with a advisory or a watch. Students can be outside, their hands can be very cold or their feet can be very cold. It can be painful, but they're not going to damage their skin. And with a warning, they're going to get frostbite in a very short period of time. When we have ice or a lot of snow, it's more alchemy and there's some guesswork in all of that. The worst thing that we can have, very frankly, in terms of school closures and the unpredictability of it is an ice storm, because you never know when a power line is going to come down and you're going to lose all of your power to your given school. The very worst thing that we can have in school is to have to send kids home, particularly younger students, in the middle of the day. That's always a consideration for us, because when you send kids home in the middle of the day, then all sorts of strange things happen, because every family has a different contingency plan, and little kids don't always follow that contingency plan. So that was something that the cold days, we hope that we don't repeat. And one of the questions that we also heard in this is, hey, why don't we have e-learning days? There are a number of different districts that are doing e-learning days. Why haven't we? And the answer on that is relatively straightforward. 3 years ago, the state approved 3 different districts. Leiden High School was one, another district, District 94, and also Gurnee is an elementary district. Those are the only 3 in the state that were approved for that. 2 years ago, they changed the funding formula, and with that formula, they did not differentiate or stipulate this is what constitutes a school day. So a number of districts said, hey, they haven't declared what a school day is, so we're just going to move ahead with this and see what the state has to say. We were not one of those districts that was willing to do that. There is now a bill, Senate Bill 28, that is very likely in some form to pass both the Senate and the House and be signed by the governor, which is going to redefine the school day. So we don't want to invest in a bunch of time and effort in creating an e-learning day, e-learning possibility, only to have the rug pulled out from under that work. So that's the status on that. Another thing the board members have at their table, an invoice. This is an invoice that was delivered to Congressman Schneider and Senator Durbin and Senator Duckworth as well. It's the annual advocacy conference, and the focus this year of the National School Board Association, they have essentially one key advocacy position. That is the full funding of IDEA, also known as special ed. Very straightforward. So IDEA was passed in 1975 with a plan to fund it at 40%. The highest that it's ever gotten is 18%, and we are now at 15%. And the way it works in our community is essentially this is a federal mandate with very partial funding, and the impact of that is really substantial. So just this past year, local taxes paid the differential, which is almost $2.9 million, and that's only for 1 year, and that's only for District 115. The IDA shortfall over the past 12 years is $21 million. So you think of that, to go back, $2.9 million is the equivalent of is nearly 30 teachers for us in a year. And the impact that those 30 teachers would have is very substantial. But because nearly all of our revenue is raised locally, what this federal mandate means for us as taxpayers is that the feds have mandated something that we pay in our property tax to make it happen. So when you add 67 in that for Lake Forest residents, it's $27.5 million. You add those two together, and just in the last 12 years, that shortfall is $48 million. You divide that by roughly 20,000 homeowners, and this is a very substantial amount of money annually that people are paying for this federal mandate. So the NSBA's position is a clear one and a meaningful one, and part of the advocacy is that, look, this affects every single student in the district, not just special ed students. It looks like it's special ed funding, but the reality is that the school board has to take money from all students to pay for this mandate. And so by fully funding this, every student in the district would be benefited. So we met with Congressman Schneider. The red towels were given to all of the school board members, very recognizable on Capitol Hill. We also had about a half an hour with Senator Duckworth. They are all three, and again, Senator Durbin, all three about a half an hour with each of them. They're very fluent in our issues, and they're absolutely supportive of the National School Board Association position. And Senator Durbin said it very succinctly and well. Yep, the Senate and the House passed it, and it was signed by the President, and we simply don't appropriate funds for it every single year. And so that's what the advocacy position is fully funded going forward. And that completes the superintendent's report.
Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? No? Okay. Screwed up. So we have two reports. First one is on extracurriculars. Ashley? You want to introduce yourself, Ashley? You're relatively new.
I am. Hi, I'm Ashley Malik. This is my first year at Lake Forest High School. I'm the Student Activities Director. This is my 11th year in education, though, so. Next.
So I'm standing here for support and also to chime in where and when necessary. But Ashley joined us this year as our Student Activities Director. She jumped right in to everything. It's been building relationships and connecting with a lot of students, connected to what you're going to hear about tonight regarding our goal around making sure that kids are actively engaged in extracurricular activities, because we view extracurricular activities as an extension of the classroom.
So, in connection to our building goal, we want all students to participate in extracurriculars for the number of years that they are at our high school. And so currently our KPI is meeting 90% of students engaged in extracurriculars. So whether that be clubs, activities, or athletics. So how we're doing that is currently, so our students 9th through 12th grade, this is their engagement by the numbers, 89.77% of our students are currently engaged, so we are so close. So currently there are 47 students that are returning from last year, so sophomores through seniors who were not at all engaged last year. Now 47 of the students who were not engaged last year are currently engaged this year. So that's for a number of different reasons. There's been 4 new clubs added this year that students have initiated. And so those clubs are e-gaming club, and you may have heard about that. There's an article in the Lake Forest Leader talking about the excitement. This is an IHSA emerging sport. The Asian Pacific American Club, Hack Club, which is a computer coding club, and the Acapella Club. So Special Olympics were also added to all 3 sports seasons, so bocce, basketball, and track. So basketball actually just had their game against Stevenson last week. And it's been really pulling on students of all interests, anyone who wants to participate. They're open membership for students who'd like to be on the Special Olympic team or students who'd like to be mentors on the Special Olympics team.
And just a reminder, in last year's report, we identified Special Olympics due to learning more about which groups of students or different students who were involved and who had not been involved. And we realized some of our students with special needs weren't involved because we didn't offer anything that they wanted to do or could connect to. And so this came directly out of this work of knowing more about our students.
So where are we headed for the rest of this year? As I've been doing, and as I will continue to do, we're going to be reaching out to students and seeing what they need in order to connect in our building. For some clubs, that's just, or for some students, that's just letting them know what clubs and activities are available to them. Sometimes it's going through and just meeting with them and telling them that they're important and we want them to be engaged and showing them that they're valued to our building. And helping students really find success in their own way and knowing that sometimes their success can look different from others and they might not have made the baseball team this year, but there's a spot for them in the art club if they want that. We're going to continue to define what active engagement looks like. So we've really kind of been locking down on our numbers and creating thresholds of what engagement looks like. So it's not just that you attended 2 meetings this year and so you've earned your participation for the year, but it's defining thresholds and establishing those in our data so that we know how engaged our students are. Not only they went to a couple meetings, but how often are these meetings happening, and statistically how often are these students able to make it. Certain clubs, we saw a huge jump in seasonal changes. So once fall athletics stopped, we saw a jump in our clubs and activity participation. So it was really kind of cool. You could almost see it to the day when clubs and activities picked up or when students were suddenly in season for the winter season. And so we're also going to continue the growth and development of our coaches and our sponsors. In athletics, they use the Positive Coaching Alliance. And then for activities, we're doing other professional connections within the NSC conference and getting people out there talking to other sponsors and really finding what's working for them. For example, like our Model UN is a great example for other clubs to reach out to us as a mentor. And so it's just really kind of building those collaborative relationships. So do you guys have any questions? Yeah.
One of the things we talked about when Dr. Holland first brought this to us was the concerns around transportation needs, and I wonder to what extent that continues to be an issue in terms of kids who are not engaged or are not engaged at the level they would like to be.
Mm-hmm. I will say most often when students are not engaged, there's usually an outside job or they're competitive in hockey or gymnastics on their own accord. Several students have mentioned transportation, but there are alternatives to that. So there are clubs that just because you can't make it to the men's club meeting Friday morning doesn't mean you can't participate in the men's club volunteerism on Saturday. So it opens up a little bit of a conversation about, can you catch a ride with a friend? Are your parents free on the weekend? So that is kind of an obstacle that we're still kind of fleshing out and seeing how we can help them. But there are alternatives to how they can become engaged just through volunteerism in the community as well. So, yeah.
Okay, if you could wave a magic wand, Ashley, what would you do to get it to 100%?
Magic wand. I would
Hang on,
add
Ashley,
a
can I lift
little.
the hook for a second?
Yeah.
We talked about layering in the kids who can't participate or participate outside of official pieces. Does that 89.77 include like the kids who are doing gymnastics downtown or doing rowing downtown that aren't?
No. It's
So-
only
so
students.
the real number is somewhere higher. You still need the magic
Yes,
wand to get the
right.
final
So
bit.
students who are competing or actively engaged elsewhere, yeah, that is obviously, so there's a student who's like a national gymnast. There's different tennis players I've met with who they've met and played private, but we don't count that into our numbers. We're counting 9th through 12th graders that are involved in our extracurricular and activities.
So you still need
Yeah.
your magic wand to get
My
the
magic
5%.
wand, I think if we could somehow build in some sort of like advisory or something where students could join the club during a study hall, I don't know how you would be able to manage the sponsorships. I think that's a harder part.
Talked about that. No, Shayla, you talked about that.
First and last year.
But I think.
No, that came up. Lise, that came
building
up
it
at one of
into
your
their day
ed.
a little bit more would be, the students, 9 times
yeah.
out of 10, it's not because they don't want to. They just don't have time, they have early bird, they are just stressed to the max. And so usually if they're one of those students where they have something else, they're dancer outside of school, I just let them know, I'm here. If you're free, let me know. I would love for you to come back when you feel like you have some time.
So I have the magic. Did that get a magic wand there for you?
Well, yeah, clubs during the day. About that at one of the ed committee meetings, about, at least, I think Tim and Michaeline brought it up before Ashley started as one of the things that they were thinking about. Because it was one of the things kids said as to why they couldn't participate. If they could sub out a study hall or a class or, but yeah, I understand the
Everyone would
difficulties.
love to get out of class.
Wouldn't they? Be in a club? Yeah.
For more fun.
Yeah,
So-
I would have been right first in line.
So I love all the different extracurricular activities, and Mike and Shayla and everybody involved has impressed upon me the importance of extracurriculars to having a fully engaged and prosperous student. I love it. Love seeing all these scouts here too, by the way. Thank you for coming tonight. But here's a live example. I'm fortunate enough I have 3 kids in the school system, 1 at the middle school, 2 at the high school, and they're engaged in athletics and whatnot. But I love the clubs you guys have so much, and try as I might to convince them to go get into some of the clubs and whatnot. They don't really go and try them as much as I think if they just went and tried them a few times, they might like them. So maybe there's no time, maybe there's real hurdles to trying to figure out how to get them, but to whatever extent you could create invitations and trial balloons for kids to actually go and sit in different clubs and maybe get some extra credit or maybe get something else to just experience them. I think you might get a couple more kids sticking around, because I think sometimes it's not just the transportation, or it's not just that they have some major passion of their own, so they just never got the ball rolling initially. So
Yeah.
if you could ever look for some way to do that, I think that might help too.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. That is something I've talked to Shayla about. I am interested, and I've been meeting with some people on staff about creating this month of activities and engagement, and going into spaces like the cafeteria and putting up like a table or a stage and putting the Scholastic Bowl team or members of that can represent, and having just students participate, pop up there for a 10-minute session, see what you can do, what trivia knowledge do you have. Because I really believe that we have a lot of really cool and authentic experiences that the students have in these individualized classroom spaces in these meetings. But I don't think they know what that translates to if you're not in the room. And so I think it would be really exciting. Like, this is something I want to do in the spring here, so that students can showcase not only what they're doing in their club, but also to show other people like that kind of that excitement and that vibrancy that they have, because I think that's going to pull more people into their spaces as well. So that is definitely on my list this year. Yeah.
There's a whole lot of individual engagement that I know that you and Tim undertook in order to get to the various new clubs that you have. So either something that surprised you or an individual story that you heard from a kid. Tell us about that.
Let me see. Good questions, guys. Ooh, I know.
I warned her.
Okay, let me see. Well, there is one student right now, because of the threshold we have set, she's not showing on my engagement list yet, because she's only attended 2 meetings. But what was really cool, so it was this freshman. I started kind of with the freshmen after finals, because I said, you know what, okay, you've had enough time to kind of look around, get your feet wet, and now I'm going to start talking to you if you're not yet engaged. And this girl, I pulled her in, I was just talking to her, I'm like, what are you into, what have you been doing? She told me, she goes, I'm really into coding, but I don't know if that exists here. I was like, wait. And so we have this coding club. It's 27 students, and it just started in August. So it's so cool. Well, I told her, I'm like, there's this club, it starts on Thursday, or it's meeting on Thursday. She walks in, and I go in, of course, because I'm checking on to see if she went. And there's a student, the president of the club, who started, and she's sitting there, and she's just sitting there and explaining every step of what they've done so far, and the website they're following. They follow this online curriculum. And so it was just one of those where it kind of hit me, where I just felt like, this is happening. And it's these small steps, and every little bit matters, because I'd met that girl 2 days ago, and all of a sudden she's engaged, and I just have been kind of watching her now, because I know she's almost there, and one more meeting, and she's pushing our percentage up even more. And so it's kind of cool. I know, well, but I just think it's one of those where it's like every kid really has a stake in, it's kind of like this fun puzzle to find. Like, how are they kind of ticking, and what are they afraid of, especially when walking into those doors? There's been a couple students I've said, do you want me to go? Like, I'm going to go to gaming club on Friday. Do you want to meet me here, and we'll go? And so there's one student who took me up on that, and she was like, really? I'm like, yes, like, I'll go to the gaming club with you. And so we played the game. And so gaming club's in the library, and it's really open, and they play a different game every week, so it's very easy to join whenever. But it was just getting through those doors and knowing, who do I talk to? How do I get started? Where do I sit? So to me, it's been a really, really fun way to get engaged with students in a different way. I was an English teacher for 10 years, so now doing this, it's amazing how many people you can meet in a day and how many stories you're really able to kind of help. So
I'm not going to throw you a difficult one. I just wanted to say thank you because you have done an amazing job, both you and Tim, in reaching out, and how awesome to be that kid that gets a personal connection and gets to spend time with someone that really helps connect them and make them feel special and part of our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, next is our, what we call post-secondary report, or what our kids are doing after high school. Patrick.
Okay, good evening, thank you. Again, delighted to be back here again. This is my second year having the opportunity to go through the post-secondary report. I want to go through three areas of focus tonight, hit on some essential questions, and then, of course, answer any questions you have. I want to look at what does post-secondary look like for LFHS grads. Want to look at and discuss a little bit about amidst the changing national landscape of the college admissions, what Mr. Markuson spoke to nicely at the beginning of the meeting. How does the LFHS college programming maintain vision? Because we have a vision, and we believe in that vision. And amidst the changing metrics and the changing nuances of what college admissions looks like, we adapt and grow while maintaining our vision. And then what are areas of the college search curriculum that LFHS can improve in? And one of the nice things about this area is we now have some voice of students from the past that can provide data for us in that area as well. Post-secondary, what does it look like for our students? The numbers from the last several years are very consistent. 95%, approximately 94 or 95% of our students enroll in 2- or 4-year colleges coming out of Lake Forest High School. Our acceptance rates to the schools in the country are at or above the acceptance rates as ranked by U.S. News annually. Our students concentrate in areas of the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana. That's where a heavy concentration of our students are. 100 students went to the top 7 to the top 7 concentrated schools. The remaining 287 students went to over 142 students around the country. So there is a concentration, but there's also this really great distribution all over the country. Colorado and California continue to be popular. TCU entered the top list of private schools this year, so Texas is becoming popular. And then the Southeast Conference, as mentioned at the Ed Committee meeting earlier this week, some of those states and those public universities are becoming quite aggressive with offering out-of-state students higher academic tuitions. And so that's drawing students from the Midwest to warmer climates and to schools that they see Saturdays playing football in the fall. So that's definitely an influence. Top public schools by enrollment are the University of Illinois, CLC, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Miami of Oxford. Very similar to last year's distribution. Private enrollment, Marquette, Dayton, Northwestern, TCU, and DePauw and Greencastle. Also schools that are always consistently in the top 5, 6, or 7. As I mentioned, our acceptance rates are at or higher than the national rankings to these schools. And our one thing about the 94% of 2 or 4 year enrollments, what's I think particularly telling is our persistence rate. So our freshmen, 95% of our freshmen who enroll in a 2 or 4 year university go back for sophomore year, and that's much higher than the national average. Our 6-year graduation rate, which is the typical metric, the time for determining a college graduation, remains at right around 75%. That compares favorably to the national average of mid to high 50s, but again, something that we will continue to look at and always ask the question, what about that 25%? Some are persisting beyond 6 years, which is a story in and of itself. Some have disenrolled and re-enrolled, which is a story in and of itself. So we want to get a better snapshot of what that looks like. I would say, and I mentioned this previously, the National Student Clearinghouse is a primary data source for us for some of this longitudinal data. I want to look at that deeper to better understand the accuracies of that data before we invest more deeply in it being a major storyteller source for us. Secondly, the programming, programming here at Lake Forest High School, because it really does inform what we know about our students as they matriculate through our high school and what we know about our students as they move on to post-secondary options. As Mr. Markison alluded to, the changing landscape of college admissions, significant changes over the last 15 years. The amount of applications that each student, the average number of applications that students at Lake Forest High School send each year per student, the average doubled in the last 15 years, from 3.7 to 7.4. We know many students are sending out dozens of applications. The common application, the coalition application are all features that make it easier for students to apply to colleges. And that's good. That's good that students are casting wider nets. They are applying to safety schools, they're applying to schools of high interest, and they're also applying to some reaches to say, you know, I can get some stretches out there to see if I get favorable responses. We know that there are more students in this country that are seeking post-secondary education, and that's also a good thing. Colleges are marketing students, low-income students, students of color, first-gen students, and international students at a rate greater than they ever have. Last year, applications for first-time freshmen to national colleges increased by 4%. 4% nationally in 1 year. That happens every year. Obviously, that has a multiplicative factor. International students' first-time applications to colleges went up 8% in 1 year. International students largely pay full tuition. They're highly sought after by U.S. colleges. And they're also very competitive students as well. So the competitive field has grown, and I would be lacking if I didn't mention also that as colleges proclaim and publicize the growing application pool, they also are quick to note that their admission rates, their acceptance rates are stable or lowering. We know that highly selective colleges, as chosen by U.S. News or other rating services, are highly influential to families when they are considering what colleges are best fits for their students. But as schools continue to attempt to be highly selective, few and fewer students are being accepted to colleges. Colleges also put a heavy emphasis on yield rate. They want to accept not only the best students, but they want to accept those best students that they can rest assured are going to enroll in their colleges. And so there's many nuances to that. But that being said, we control what we can control. And the Lake Forest High School Counseling Educational Services Department, with the 7 college and generalist counselors, very proud to work with them. The seminar programming for our students starts freshman year, and we don't dive right in with college programming freshman year, but we do dive right in with helping students get to better understand themselves as learners, understand what their interests are, understand what some of their talents and abilities might be, and how those might translate to areas beyond high school. Junior year is when our college programming really kicks off. It's a blend of individual and small group seminars. I mentioned this previously, something I was very impressed with when I first came and saw our college, our counseling seminars. Each student meets in a seminar format with their counselor 4 times a year, all 4 years, and obviously there are walk-in hours and appointment times all year round. But these college seminars, these counseling seminars are groups of 10 or 11 students at max. In the high school I came from, they did the whole junior class for one counselor in one fell swoop. So once a quarter, they'd meet with 65 students in a group in a big room and disseminate that information. I thought that was awesome. And then I walked by one of our seminars and saw about 6 kids with a counselor and realized that our counselors devote all 8 periods over a block schedule for a week to meet in small groups, to get to know each individual better, to get to understand what their interests are, and to start then brainstorming with them and the family what fits might look like that are pertinent to each student and individualized. Our College and Career Resource Center is a great resource for students. Over 220 colleges every fall come to see our students, to meet with them, college reps, connect with counselors, answer questions. And then in the spring, it turns into the Career Resource Center, and we have career seminars with Jim Sullivan in community and engagement has begun kicking off, bringing members of the community who are involved in different careers into the CCRC to meet with students, speak to classes about different pathways they've gone through to get into the current fields that they're in. So it's a very vibrant area, well utilized by our students. We're going to continue to expand communication so that communication is timely, accurate, and meets families where they need. Our Scout Destinations is a quarterly article that was emailed out in December for the first time. It's a new quarterly publication. Articles, links to articles, updates on colleges that maybe families have never heard from, important financial aid information, nuts and bolts of upcoming events, as well as feedback from counselors on colleges they've visited. Meant to go out quarterly. We had an open rate of over 60% for our first publication, so clearly it's hitting the mark, and we want to continue for that communication to be proactive and persistent. We want to drive the narrative. We want to be providing families with accurate information and things they need to know throughout the process. Evening program, we continue to do evening programming around financial aid. We have a representative from Xavier University that comes in twice in first semester to talk about financial aid. We have evening programming for filling out FAFSA forms, This March, for the first time, we'll have a panel presentation of college admissions reps from around the Midwest, different types of colleges, small liberal arts, larger public, and they will answer questions from families around the admissions process and the qualities they look for in candidates. We want to do more of that to meet families, provide the information for families that they need. And then lastly, with our ongoing professional development, our college counselors spend a great deal of time through their membership in NACAC and IACAC and CACA. Those are all acronyms for basically college admissions counselors, the professional organizations that they belong to. Every year, counselors go to an area of the country and hit up as many schools as they can in that geographical area. They meet with college reps. They get information, updates on trends in college admissions. They bring that all back and share with the other counselors so we grow our capacity collectively. They tour the dorms and the cafeterias. They look at where the campus is in relation to urban areas, good dining destinations and nightlife, so that they can come back and share with students and families just kind of what the on-campus vibe is to give students snapshots and make recommendations for what might be high leverage college visits for our families. Lastly, just taking some snippets of how we want to, next steps and how we want to continue to grow the capacity of our programming. I mentioned the evening panel presentations. We're always happy to provide more opportunities for families to come in to answer questions and provide timely and accurate information on the college process. We want to be a very vibrant source of information for families, because many families indicate that they need our assistance. One of the data points from the senior survey of last year was that 4 out of 5 students report not utilizing a private college consultant. So our students are using their counselors as a primary source for the college application process, and we don't take that lightly. We want to continue to give them the information they need. And then last year in March, we sent a survey to the 400 and some odd graduates of the class of 2017. We put together a survey that said, you're a year out of Lake Forest High School. How do you think you were prepared academically, critical writing skills, analytical writing, reading comprehension? We also asked, and those all came back very high on a scale of 10, that students felt that they were very well prepared. We also asked them, how well prepared do you think you were for handling time management skills, executive functioning skills, integrating to a new social environment, and those numbers were lower. They were telling that students felt like it was difficult, and it is a difficult transition. So how can we weave some of this information into ongoing curricular opportunities? And then lastly, we received 55 responses from that 400 and some. So that's a decent return rate. Of those 55 responses, 5 students for a write-in prompt of what we could do better, what could Lake Forest High School have done better, said that they wanted to be better aware of the diversity that existed on college campuses and how they hadn't gotten that at Lake Forest High School. And so that's really compelling to me and to the counselors. How can we bring students back that have been on college campuses for 1, 2, or 3 years, provide panel opportunities for students, for their peers to say, hey, this is what it's like. Here's opportunities for you in your time here at high school. How can we broaden the lens of what a diverse world is and bring that to our current students? So not only from a time management and social integration standpoint, but also the understanding of the world as it is, they're better prepared. So thank you.
I have one question, and it's not really probably something that you have an answer to, but Reese touched upon it, Mike's been touching upon it for quite a while now, just that it's not the name of the school that you go to, but it's what fits you best and what skills you bring to the table and what you do with their time there. But yet every year the parents panic, the students want those top named schools, and the statistics are proving that doesn't make any difference. And it must have been a slide you sent, and what their pay is once they graduate. So when does the narrative change? When do people stop getting horribly upset when they don't make those top schools? I said it wasn't a question, you probably had an answer to.
What comes to mind for me then is just we'll continue to try to control the narrative. We'll continue to try to give as many opportunities for families to understand what the research supports, what people who are involved in the college admissions process say about what fit means. I also go back to our persistence data that tells us that 95% of our students are staying in college, returning for a sophomore year. That feels good to me, that at least they're staying with it. But I also am interested in, is that 5%? Could we dive into that 5% to say, what was it that created that false understanding of your freshman year, and how could we navigate some of those misunderstandings? So, good question.
So one of the things that we've touched on too is I think some of this is getting the parents into the narrative, or having them understand that historically growing up, we've talked about the spectrum of what school was like when we were younger is very different now. That the gap between 1 and 100 when we were younger was enormous. The gap between ranking, which I don't even think you should rank, but ranking between 1 and 100 now is minuscule. And so the names that you would have dismissed because 25 years ago are no longer dismissible. And I think as part of this engagement, because the kids are pretty savvy, I think, at figuring out where they want to go, but the parents overrule the fit sometimes because they say, well, that's a terrible school. But they have they look at U.S. News and things. So I think you're doing a great job with the narrative, but getting the parents involved and getting rid of the preconceptions or misconceptions is going to be huge in getting a better fit for the kids.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, just another further question. It looks like 2% or so take a gap year. Do we ever track how many students take a gap year to, go see the world, join the Peace Corps, do whatever, come back and go to college afterwards?
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't followed up with that. The gap year is a growing reality for students for a variety of reasons. You mentioned travel the world, do service. It also, for some of our students, means work, save money, and spend the time just really understanding what pathway they want to take. But for either one of those, it's important for us to follow up and get a sense of what year 2 looks like for them. The Gap Fair is becoming, which Nutra handles annually, is becoming an extremely popular thing. It's becoming, when I was at the NACAC conference in September, there were a lot of gap year companies there, so it is a lucrative industry. What we want is a sense of why they're choosing that, and what they're learning or where they are in that file at the end of that year, and how we could continue to afford services for them to make college decisions or post-secondary decisions at the end of that year. Thanks, Ted.
And you might even pick up a few more with PG years with kids for sports or other things who sort of do the equivalent of redshirting and repeat,
Yeah, for a
which will
50
fall off on your thing, but
Correct.
really are still continuing.
Right.
They're doing it for different reasons.
Right.
I was just wondering, in light of Ashley's presentation, how much the counselors are involved in extracurricular engagement. I know they've got their plate full with core academic advising and college advising.
It's all part of the puzzle. And so when our counselors, we're going through registration conversations right now, all of February is about talking about next year and how many classes you want to take and what classes you want to challenge yourself with and grow yourself in, but also what areas you're interested in and how you want to represent those interests through your electives, because we also want to provide balance during the day to provide opportunities after school and before school to be involved in the extracurriculars and activities. So those conversations go hand in hand. Counselors understand that our students are involved in things that keep them here till 9 o'clock, and so that conversation may be around then a study hall might be worth your while, or tying in your elective with what you're interested after school from extracurriculars. So they're part of articulating the importance of them, maintaining a balance in their academic day to provide space for that, as well as championing how the benefit of extracurriculars will have on their curricular performance. Thank you all.
We now move on to committee reports. First, Lise, Education Committee.
Well, we met just this Tuesday, and Patrick, Dr. Sasson presented almost all the same material, so it was a nice preview of tonight's very important presentation. I did want to mention a couple of things we discussed related to the college process that I thought were valuable. One was Dr. Sasson talked about some new pathways to engineering. Our students are aware of these big engineering schools, and those are getting harder and harder to get into those difficult programs, but other two-year colleges are opening up new pre-engineering pathways that I hope more of our students will take a look at. And then we also had a lively discussion about the value of college tours, which some of us feel that taking your kid on a college tour, it's all about the quality of the food and how good the restaurants are and how cool the gym is, and maybe that's not the best basis for our students to be making their decisions. So as a parent who's done with all this, I would actually tell parents not to kill themselves to visit a jillion colleges, because I think it's kind of a crapshoot, but that's my editorializing.
Finance and Ops, Jen, Dave's here, so he could do it. No.
All right, thank you. Well, I'll start, and then Jen, she can add in. I would like to editorialize a little bit on the college searches and whatnot. To what she said, the importance of the tour provider on the colleges is amazing, and it amazes me how many colleges don't pay attention. I mean, the kids, my boys, while they were taking tours, it would come down to who the tour provider was. At any rate, we'll see. Hopefully, none of us will be swayed by the food in the cafeteria that day. So at any rate, we had a fairly active past couple months in terms of the Finance and Ops Committee. We started in January with an auditor's report that was clean and solid, and continued good testament to how Jen and her team run our finances. Really, really good. So in February, we did have a meeting on February 4th. We had several subjects that we touched upon, one of which that I think is important was student fees. We reviewed all the student fees, and we made a recommendation to largely maintain the current fee structure with a minor increase to athletic participation as well as the yearbook fees. But if you look back over the past 4 to 5 years, it's going to be the least significant increase we've taken on student fees is what we're bringing to the board tonight to recommend. I think that's a testament to working within our budgets, and also I think was aided by, as we're looking forward to this year's budget, and Jen and her team, Brittany, they presented the budget projections for this year, and we're coming in not just within our budget but under our budget, so another good year coming in for us relative to plan. Certainly, there's a lot of things yet to play out. We are looking to next year's budget. As you know, it is a stated goal of Reese, and I think all of our goals, to not draw down on the reserves, to make sure we continue to have prudent budget measures and intelligent management of the budget, And we're working towards that now while accomplishing a lot of big things like embarking upon a master plan, which we think is another sign of good fiduciary responsibility and good planning that we want to see take place for a long time out. We also want to make sure that as we consider these financial reports and as we consider these financial plans and as we continue to talk about the financial performance of the district, that we make a concerted effort to communicate it in a manner that's easy to understand, forthright, with a lot of lead time so that everybody watching and anybody who wants to follow up can understand where we're at. So really a lot of different things going on. One thing I did want to call out also is I was very happy and appreciative of the fact that the finance team was conducting a new audit company search, and they were very accommodating and pursued some of the finance and ops community members to attend and listen to the different auditors. And I wanted to make sure that I called out both Mark Allen and Rebecca Quackenbush for attending a good portion of those new audit firms' presentations this past week. So, like I said, a pretty busy past month for the committee. Jen, did I miss anything, or did you want to add something?
The only thing I would add, since you promoted, is our next meeting. We will be talking about the tentative budget for 1920. Will be on June 24th, usually at 7 a.m. in the morning here.
Well, that's it. Thank you.
Policy Committee, Ted?
Yes, the Policy Committee, we did meet late last week. Most of the changes were just statutory requirements changes. And then Diana.
The only thing that was a little bit different, it's the board member oath and conduct, which will become important come May when the new members join. There was some language added, just maybe not for our board, but for other boards, to really make sure that they knew the role they were taking on and the importance of it.
Next are some liaison reports. Ed, Sally, anything?
Only a couple of things. In early December, the strike of Acero, which runs charter schools in the city of Chicago, who struck for 4 days, reached an agreement with the city of Chicago. The important things to take away from this is that it was one of the first charter school strikes in the nation. The Acero Charter School teachers were represented by the Chicago Teachers Union, so it's of enormous interest in a post-Janus U.S. Supreme Court decision, but also across the country in terms of teachers unions being interested in picking up members via charter schools. I think the other thing that will be interesting to watch is what effect it has on the explosion of charter schools being set up in states. The Acero Teachers Union, the concessions that they received were wins in terms of wage increases, smaller class size, and a shorter school day, much of which brought them into harmonization with what the Chicago Teachers Union has. So it got a lot of press. It's a very interesting development. On January 31st, I chickened out at Half Day Road and did not go to the Ed meeting because it was snowing, and I called Lisa Elliott, who was already there, and said, "You're on your own." So I will have to ask her if there are updates worth noting. In addition, on January 9th, the 101st General Assembly was sworn in the state of Illinois. Over 300 bills have been filed, and I'm now going to read each one of them to you. Nothing at this point worth discussing. Lastly, Ed Red, under new leadership, Sarah Hartwick is really pushing the envelope in terms of being useful to us as members. And I wanted to call out in particular a program that they have. They meet once a month on Fridays. On March 1st, they have a presentation from a group of architects on the intersection of building construction and student mental health, which I thought was interesting in light of the fact that we are moving forward with a master facilities review. It's something that I'm going to attend, but I will forward to the rest of you in case anyone else is interested in joining. Thanks.
Anything to report on the foundation, APT?
You know, they love to meet. Actually, the boosters meeting was canceled due to bad weather. It was one of those January 22nd pre-polar vortex days. Anyway, they just wanted everyone to know that Booster Palooza is Saturday, March 9th. It's going to be held at the Gorton Center beginning at 7 o'clock. They have 4 local bands, and they have a great live auction, silent auction, baskets, great food, and an open bar. All of the proceeds benefit the student athletes, so that's something definitely to think about, and you can register online at the Booster website. Also, you're probably all in need of new Scout Spirit wear, and they are open every Wednesday through Friday from 11 to 3, and they would love for you to come by and shop. And once again, all of those proceeds go back to benefiting the student athletes. APT has had 2 meetings. The highlight Shayla kind of already alluded to, as well as JD. The talent show is February 21st to the 23rd. $15 for the student tickets. They love everybody to come because they've gone down from 4 shows to 3 shows. So reminder, it's a fundraiser. Please come and support. They're looking for people interested in serving on the APT, and Kristen DeNoble would love to talk to you if you are interested. Prom is coming up, believe it or not, May 11th. The theme is Fly Me to the Moon. There'll be Project Safe prom flyers coming out soon to help pay for the buses. And they're also looking for chaperones. Chill Out, the Scout Circus is coming up February 20th. Apparently this is a huge, fabulous, fun thing they all love. The Sloth will be there. Apparently that's the highlight, as well as a Balloon Artist Yo-Yo Club and other animals from Eloa. The foundation had their meeting via teleconference because Jeff Folker is in charge, and there's no snow day that stops the foundation from meeting. It was actually really very fun. The nominating committee is working to fill their trustee openings, and you can access their website to learn more about the open positions and fill out a form if you're interested. The business incubator pitch night is May 31st. They're looking for corporate sponsors, so if you're interested, please contact the foundation. The big news was the grants. They have 14 grants that are currently being reviewed for $153,000 in funding. They have a very comprehensive review process involving the instructional directors, technology department, buildings and grounds, and the administration. And they invited all of us to attend grant day when they award the grants on Friday, February 22nd around 9 o'clock. So any of us who want to come, they would love to have us come and see what they're giving out. I told you all about Foundation Month. They raised $4,700, which is the second highest amount they've ever raised since starting that Foundation Month fundraising. And lastly, they have a luncheon coming up on April 17th at Exmoor Country Club. Lots of silent auction items to bid on, and they encourage all of us to come. So lots of things that we can go to. So that's what's been going on in the parent organizations.
Ted, anything with NSSCD?
Yes, well, NSSCD, we're in the middle of a mission, vision, goals review, and one of the things we're going to be doing is changing our name. We don't know what it's going to be yet, but I think it's going to simplify. We're kind of looking at, special ed, that, these aren't special kids, they're just regular students. So we're kind of pushing that it might become just the Northern Suburban Education District. And then also the foundation, we're kind of thinking of going along the same lines, which would just be the Northern Suburban Education Foundation. And then Super Bowl Sunday, I was in Dr. Holland's old the family stomping grounds and jumped in the Atlantic Ocean for Special Olympics. I'd like to thank everybody who supported that. Small group of pilots, we raised over $10,000 ourselves, and the event itself raised a little over $1 million. So it's a lot of idiots jumping in the ocean. But also, along with funding for going above and beyond, I'd like to thank this board, the Education Foundation. There's 18 member districts that are part of the consortium. Lake Forest High School District 115 is the only board that 100% of the board members donated to the foundation this year. And also, I'd also like to make a special note, Illinois Bone and Joint, about 9 months ago, also was the keynote fundraiser and donated $2,500 to the fundraising for the, and again, this is money that goes to grants and things that the school, that's kind of outside of what the school can finance and fund. So I'd just like to congratulate everybody for doing their part and make it, once again, making the high school look good. Thanks.
Before we get on to the action items, we have a quiz for the scouts in the room about what was covered. I saw Beth sneaking out. So there's just 10 questions on everything that was covered in the first hour of the meeting. No, really, yeah. Okay, good. Good, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear it. Thanks for coming. So now move on to the action item part of the meeting. I mean, we have several. Just to remind the board the way I'm going to do it, we're going to call for a motion, call for a second, and then we'll have discussion and questions after that. Okay, so first item up for review, first action item is we're way ahead of ourselves, is the 2020-2021 school calendar. So may I have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 calendar. That's a mouth. That's going to get hard to say. I got to figure out a way to shorten that.
I
You can't
moved.
say 2021. All right.
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the 2020-2021 calendar.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I have some questions, comments, thoughts, and I guess Shayla, or you, or Rebecca addressing this one. I would notice that they moved the start date up. We moved the start date up to the 17th of August and graduation over Memorial Day weekend. We have a plan to let parents know about this change on kind of what was the rationale with moving everything up.
So we actually go through a process of looking at all of our calendars every year. So mapping out our calendar from 1819, for example, 1920 and 2021, as well as thinking about our conversations around student attendance days, which have now been clarified by the state, as we have to have 176 days. It can't be around that number. We also work within a collective bargaining agreement as well. And so as we started thinking about what we're starting to learn about our shift in our calendar and in our exam schedule, you'll also notice on this calendar that winter break ends the semester. So there are a couple things, and this is 2 years, again, this is 2 years out. In order to think about the amount of days and within each semester, as well as the impact, in order to end semester exams, in order to end the semester at the end of winter break, it pushed us up about a week. I do want to note that every year our students are already back. Over half of our students are already back because they participate in fall sports. I know it doesn't impact everyone. But if you compare our calendar as well to other schools, it is not to say we have to mirror them. Most schools are already back, and they also end a lot earlier than we do. But that's also because most schools have gone to ending the semester after final exams. And so we had a discussion every year. Multiple calendars get vetted across the building, and especially with feedback from LFEA. And this was the calendar that we felt like was going to be the best way to move forward with some of the changes and some of the things we're learning about. We are still in the process of learning, of course, through the surveys and the feedback we're getting about the impact of coming back from winter break and having 2 weeks of instruction. There is a difference that we're learning between how it impacts full year classes as well as semester classes. So that's also a distinction and something we've considered. We also started thinking about the balance of the schedule and who it impacts, as well as the additional days like assessment day and all of the other days that end up on the back end of the school year rather than up front. All that to say, there are a lot of moving parts that get considered, and so the communication will be to let everyone know they have 2 years let everyone know that this is our calendar that we're proposing, and we think is the best and most sound instructional calendar to move forward.
Will there be communication let it go out pending our approval of this calendar so that people can start adjusting to that transition, knowing that it's coming?
I mean, all of this information is public, but there are other changes that we've made, for example, for other aspects of the calendar for next year. If you feel like that's necessary for families, we can definitely do that.
I just think there might be some families that might be surprised with graduation over Memorial Day. I mean, I see the pros and the cons of both sides of it, and whatever changes you guys have researched and found to be the best. I just think sharing it with all of our faculty and our parent community that this is a definite change. People kind of just automatically assume it's going to be the same year after year. I think with the explanation you give and with just a heads up that it's coming, it gives people a chance to adjust.
Absolutely. And I mentioned this earlier, in addition to reminding people of the calendar that was approved for next year, as well as emergency days, and how I agree that more communication, we've been trying to communicate out information, so that will be fine. And then, since you mentioned it, in terms of Memorial Day, there was some feedback of whether we should focus on extending into June or end where we can end. Part of that conversation was looking at when seniors are done. Seniors always end earlier than everyone else. What happens after a large amount of our students, as you know, take AP exams? What does that mean for the timing of those exams, as well as when they're done and when they graduate? So that was also a factor. We weren't going to extend school and then have seniors wait a couple weeks to graduate when school could actually be over. We talked about Memorial Day in terms of just thinking about a long weekend, travel plans, and maybe having more people who are able to attend. We don't know, and we'll find this out over a longer weekend.
I've enjoyed how you guys have evolved the calendar. I was really, fortunate to have children now that have had some of the different calendars here, and it's funny, I will have a child who will have this calendar too, so I guess I'll get to see the full effect. We don't know how this is, but I see the logic in it. I really like how we've moved from having a calendar that had you take the exams right after you got back from winter break. I could tell you, it really, my kids spent a lot of their winter break breaking out books and being stressed out about the exams. So they came back this year. They had them before, and winter break was far more relaxed for them. And there is the odd nature of the overlap of the end of the first semester after they get back. So having listened to them and seeing what they're going on, I think this is actually the right move. And I also like the fact that you've got it going on earlier in August, and to accommodate the semester ending cleanly, so there won't be the overlap. So I see what you're trying to do, and it seems to make a lot of logical sense, and surely we do need to let people know because it is a different change. But it's much more tight now in how you're taking it, and I like that. So.
Yeah, I would tell you, I'm a firm believer in it, and the first year will be the toughest because of the criticism. You can listen to the criticism, but change is always criticized, and once you get through the first year, I think it'll become what we always do, and it'll become background.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next up is our beverage contract. So I'm going to violate my rule here. Jen, could you talk a little bit about this contract and why we have it?
Sure. Exclusive beverage contracts aren't unusual in schools, but basically we contract with a provider for the exclusivity of being the only provider of beverages, with the exception of things like water and coffee and things that we serve out of our dispensing machines. In exchange for that exclusivity, they also provide us with some commission out of our machines. We get rebates back on all the cases that we sell in our cafeteria and with the Booster Club. We also have some things called sponsorship dollars, which means we get annual upfront dollars as well. So it's not all that uncommon. It's been a little uncommon here because this is the first shot that I've had at this contract since I've been here. The contract existed before I arrived. Somewhat of an unusual contract in my opinion, that it was 5 years or a minimum volume, whichever was the later. So here we are 13 years later finally hitting the volume. So you can see this particular, we did go out to both of the major players in the market and solicit proposals. Since it was a proposal, we did do some negotiation back and forth with both in order to try to secure the best contract for the district. In addition, since it was such a long time since this contract had been looked at and the world has changed a lot in 13 years, we did an extensive legal review of the contract as well. So it did take us a while to get to here. I think we got a great financial offer on the table, much improved over where we were previously. And overall, we've been very pleased with the service. Part of what goes along with the exclusivity is they take and do all the work. So they load the machines, they empty the money, they do all the reporting, which prior to 13 years ago, I understand was done in-house. And then we don't store any product, we don't have to keep up on it.
Have a motion to approve the beverage contract extension?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the beverage contract extension.
A second?
Second.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm going to vote against. I just wanted to say up front that I don't think we need to be in the business of sponsoring PepsiCo or selling sugary beverages and lots of disposable bottles that can't really be recycled for $12,000 worth of Gatorade. That's my opinion.
So that was, has there been, I mean, I'm not the food police, but I agree a little bit with Lisa. Has there been any thought to figuring out another way?
Actually, what I did notice is that in your packet, you're actually missing, and if you see it, it's in the conference's contract, it's referenced as Exhibit C. It actually follows a national nutrition protocol and what's appropriate to serve in schools. So we serve milk, we serve water, we serve flavored water. We don't serve energy drinks. It talks about what can be served during the school day, what can be served immediately following the day. It is different in areas that are inhabited by adults. Like, for instance, the things that you would see in our beverage machine here are not available in the student cafeteria. So I noticed, for some reason, you have all the exhibits except C. So I think Exhibit C would help in that area. Also, just to clarify, the 12.5 is cash up front to the district. That's not the Gatorade product or anything else. That's actual cash to the district.
So there is no Gatorade or Coke or no Pepsi or Gatorade or Powerade or whatever in the venues?
Gatorade is a brand of Pepsi. So yes, they do provide Gatorade support, but that's not the cash that I referenced in the front of that memo.
It's in the machine. Gatorade's in the cafeteria machine at the high school?
Yes, if it meets the qualifications. So there are certain standards that I'm happy to send to you, Exhibit C.
A way to dispense it without plastic and cans.
I don't know how you dispense beverages without cans or bottles.
I think they do have a fountain dispense. They talked a lot about the fountain beverage, right? In the contract, about the pre-mixed product and all that.
The only pre-mixed product that we're talking about is when they, for athletics, they do the big water coolers. That's the pre-mixed beverage. We don't do fountain drinks in any of our facilities. I do believe that we do have recycling in the high school, though, so the kids are more than encouraged to put their bottles in their cans.
Any other thoughts? Okay, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Nay.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, next up is approval of the field turf project in the amount of $507,761. May I have a motion to approve the field turf project in the amount of $507,761?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the field turf project in the amount of $507,760.97.
Second?
Second.
Any questions?
I had a minor question. I know they talk about the logo and the signage and the color and things on the field itself. I'm assuming that from an athletic standpoint and branding standpoint that we're all exceedingly happy with how it looks like, that there's no reason to change, add, or do anything different before we I know we may have some fiddle time to fix it, but I've never really thought about it until I was kind of reading through the bylines over the weekend. So I don't know if anyone had any. Well, I was going to say, because at last they were talking about 10 to 15 years, so I didn't know if there's anything in hindsight. I mean, I'm fine approving it as it is, but also the same question, I guess I just circle back to Tim and Carol and sort of say, look, or even the students, and say, is there anything you really wish, a logo or change or any other thing we had on the, not in the center, but, like hockey, to the sides or anything? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's perfect or the colors work.
Does that come up, Jen?
We've talked a little bit administratively. I know Tim and Carol and I have talked about that. They didn't see a need for a big change. I don't know as a district if you're planning a big logo change.
Mine wasn't the big change as much as just, if we're going to do this, it's going to last for 15 years or 10,
I think Tom's right. Do we have, I mean, we should have some kind of, I would assume there'd be some kind of weighing in on how this,
I just, it's sort of irreversible once you lay it down to change your mind 6 months later and say, I really wish we did this, because then it's going to be a lot of money to, and be cutting out and patching. I mean, like I said, it's not about the proposal itself, it's just to make sure that we vetted what we're doing out there with the logos and everything.
Can you make a note of that, or we could amend the motion to say pending review of logo and design, or?
Yeah, I think what you're really paying for is really your size, right? So your 45 by 45, your center logo piece. So if you wanted to tweak that in 2 colors, it's kind of like printing, the more colors you add, the higher your cost. But I think we could still weigh in on what that looks like.
And I know there's a delta to the cost, but like I said, I think you just want to make sure that nobody has a pressing thought, either student-wise or whatever, that they really wanted to.
Good point.
add or change.
I think it says LF in the middle, and then the end zones say Scouts or something like that. Lake Forest and Scouts.
Add an arrow in the 35-yard line. You got cocky, they have this subset. I mean, no, I'm just saying there's stuff you could do. They just want to make sure we don't want to do it and then decide after the fact that we wanted to do it. That's all.
So I know this doesn't include some of the additional items that we were discussing, but can you give the board a summary of what's in the 507-761?
Yeah, it's basically kind of a very similar replacement to what we have, but we were very precise on what we wanted as far as the depth and the type of materials. It was the same general type of size and logo. You're still stretching it over the same infrastructure. We're not redoing, the under part of it. We are hopefully in this 507 number reusing some of that infill that's underneath. So you do see part of that as a $28,500 credit for that as well. So hopefully that will be fine once they peel it all back, but we're hopeful that it would be. It really is a replacement for what we have. We did look at the 2 possible upgrades and didn't feel that they were necessary for our intended use, which is why we didn't recommend them going forward.
So is this an all-in cost? Meaning are there other project managers, designers, consultants,
Nope,
engineers?
The 536,285, which is what the cost is before the credit, is the all-in cost. We're doing it in-house. We don't need to bid it or use a consultant on that because we were able to get onto a government contract for it. And then Carol will manage the project.
So remind me, I know we had a test done, but maybe I'm wrong here. Was there another test that was going to be done in the spring?
There's typically one done in the spring. We do one in the spring and one in the fall. But by the time the spring one would occur, it would be too late to get it on for the summer. The approval tonight will get us in the queue to start right when school ends.
So we didn't fail the fall test? We were close, or?
We did not fail, but the numbers were definitely heading in the wrong direction, that we felt it would be a risk to wait. Because even if we failed in the spring, we couldn't get it on, which would make our field unplayable for the summer and fall sports.
So if we pass in the spring, we'll defer it?
No.
The
gonna
numbers
do
are
it
too
anyway.
close to the fail. There's just not a lot of life left in it. It's already extended at least 3 years past its prime, based on the presentation Dave and I put together.
So I know this was something I asked a few years, maybe a year ago when we started talking about this. Did we ever look at just putting grass down?
Yes, we did pose that question. It was determined that now that you would be ripping out all of the infrastructure in place, it would be just as costly as replacing the field and restoring it back to grass field, which then, of course, has a lot higher maintenance and a lot less ability to use it.
And it's also the infrastructure underneath that turf field also was paid for through the 2006 bonds. And so what we're going to be paying on those, we'd effectively be ripping out what we continue to pay on with that 2006 bond as well, in addition to being a really expensive project.
I'll admit I'm struggling with where we've put our CapEx money over the last 2 or 3 years. Tennis courts, turf, offices. I know there was a security component to the office renovation at East Campus, but the majority of our money hasn't, the majority of our CapEx has not gone into instructional improvement. And I'm struggling with these high $500, $600 million CapEx numbers that when we have instructional improvement needs. So that's not a question, just a comment.
So Reese, I struggled with the tennis because I felt it was much more unidimensional. I look at the volume of students percentage-wise who use that field over the course of the year and the amount of use, and I don't have as much of a struggle with that because I would wager probably approaches 3/4 of the students use that field at some point during the course of the year. So I feel like it is truly a multi-use, pretty much year-round, I think, essentially. I don't think there's ever a period that the field really is vacant, so.
No. Dave and you don't remember the numbers, do you? We figured it out. We talked to Tim and the athletic department, and between, it's not just football, but it's football and soccer and lacrosse, boys and girls, palms, cheer, field hockey. So anyway, there was so many sports and different levels. Even some of the JV teams got to play on that field. So it really does benefit a great deal of the school community.
Yeah,
Don't forget marching
so,
band.
okay, and marching band. Band. This has been something that as a board we've been talking about for a while, and we've been talking about this in light of other CapEx that we've done and things like that, like Reese just said. I mean, I share Reese's concern over these amounts that are going through in CapEx for non-instructional stuff, but a couple of things I wanted to share. First of all, the fact that this is nearing its useful life, and the fact that we've got students out there playing activities, and that this is something that I wouldn't want to risk taking away the extracurricular activities that we just talked about being so core and vital to healthy, active students. Nor would I want to even run the risk of a safety test, getting close to not passing for fear of a student getting hurt that we could have prevented by doing these things. So that's why we have to do this, in my opinion. It is what it is. I did want to let everybody know, Diana alluded to it, she and I, along with Ann, Shayla, and a few other people have been talking, and in fact, approaching other groups about public-private partnership to help fund different CapEx projects at the school. Ideally, I would have loved to have been able to get in front of this one sooner, to have had more engagement with the public, to hopefully create some fundraising initiatives from people who have points of passion around this project or other projects. For anybody who's out there watching, for anybody who reads the notes, I do want to invite you to please feel free to reach out to the board or contact us if you're interested in exploring how we might be able to do this in the future. It is my opinion that these kind of expenses are going to come along, and these kind of expenses sometimes are great partnerships for us to form with the community to do responsible spending along paths that people find an interest in. So we are going to explore this more. I personally will help take it on. I really appreciate Diana working with me on this too. But as it relates to this, again, it's something we need to do to keep in keeping with our missions, I feel, at this time. So,
Yeah, I would amend that to say if anyone's watching or read the notes, retrospectively, they're welcome to also help donate. The donations would be accepted.
brilliant.
Checks can be made out to, but yeah, even though this is a kind of a big ticket item, when you break it down, it's $50,000 a year for a really nice field, and even though, I think it's a lot of money, it is approaching its, if we could maybe get another year out of it, maybe not. So, we have to budget for it, and I would like to have seen us done a fundraising campaign, because this is an easy thing to get people behind. And then one other question. I noticed there was $20,000 donated for the soccer and the football markings. Was that donated by the company, or where'd that donation come from?
I'm not sure I understand where you're referring to it.
It's line item page 3, number 3 and 4.
Yes, that was from them. They're saying there was no charge. They might carry it on their books as a donation.
Diana, were you going to say something? So we already had a motion and a second. So roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
I, with the suggestion that we just make sure we revisit the logo and make sure that Carol and Tim and the students are happy with the design elements.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
No.
Motion carries.
Next up is approval of the dance studio flooring bid for $29,753. Again, Jen, I don't remember, maybe this fell under our threshold. I don't remember this coming up.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit when we talked
Did we?
about budget. We've had some buckling in the dance room floor, and I'm
Okay.
far from being a trained dancer, but buckling in uneven floor is a
Bad.
big concern. So
Yep.
was a little sooner than we had hoped for this replacement, but for safety reasons, we needed to replace.
Where is this?
This is at East Campus.
Where? Give me a... Where the pond?
Downstairs is where the Palmers
Palmers,
practice.
okay.
Yeah. Your daughter spent many hours there.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the dance studio flooring bid in the amount of $29,753?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the dance studio flooring bid in the amount of $29,753.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, thoughts, questions? May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is approval of the 2019-2020 student fees. As Dave mentioned, we had a fairly lengthy, really thoughtful discussion of student fees that Jen and Brittany helped us with at the last two finance and ops meetings. And for the most part, we tried to keep student fees consistent with prior years, except in transportation. Is that right? I mean, we've had a significant increase in our transportation costs. So we did have greater than an inflationary increase in transportation fees. But for the most part, especially on extracurricular fees and some of the other fees, we tried to keep those consistent. Because as we recognize, I mean, I should point out that public education is supposed to be free. It's not so free anymore when you look at the amount of fees it takes to run a high school. So anyway, I just wanted to editorialize that a little bit. So may I have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 student fees?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the 2019-2020 student fees.
Second?
Second.
Any other comments, thoughts, questions?
So we, as Mr. Lane mentioned, we had two finance and ops meetings relatively recently, and we did spend a great deal of time, line by line, talking about these items. I will say also that the staff did a great job of sharing with us some of the comments from the students regarding the cost to park your car on campus. And we are recommending flat for this year. It doesn't go up. I think that was over the discomfort, hesitation of a lot of the folks sitting on that committee. I don't think we're done with this topic. Maybe we are done with it for the 1920 school year, but I don't know that we're done with it going forward. When you look at the comparables that the staff prepared for us that are in the materials, we are out of step with our the schools in the area. I guess that's the best that I can say. We really struggled on this one.
Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization of the conversation. you know, we understand that some of the fees sometimes can be hard for some people to swallow in some of the areas collectively. We also understand we serve a lot of different interests in the community and offer a full array of services. So in the conversation, there were trade-offs and decisions made, but the first thing that I want to stress is actually we did not raise the transportation fee and we did not raise the senior parking fee. In fact, and I've got it open in front of me right now, looking back 5 years, it's the least amount of fees per activity that we've taken in those 5 years. I'm proud of that. I think that's a nod to hearing a lot of people talk about the challenge they face with some of these fees. As I said previously, we took 2 areas up. We're suggesting for vote today to take 2 areas up: the yearbook as well as the athletic participation fee per sport. And the trade-off we discussed candidly was we were going to raise the broad transportation fees more to offset a reduction in the senior parking. What we're recommending is not doing that and just holding flat. You know, I think that the discussion of the cost is real. The increase in the cost of these things is real. That's something that we can't avoid. There's definitely an increase in transportation costs coming through to the school. Where the burden of that cost lies is subject to discussion and amending if we'd like. But I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we do appreciate the fact that student fees are something that we need to take real seriously. We took the most conservative approach to them in aggregate that we could.
I would just say for all the people watching in the Lake Forest Moms Network, the senior parking money goes to the Operations and Maintenance Fund, and it covers the cost of security and maintenance. So it's not like we get to put it in some special fund for all of us. It truly goes back to the school and to protecting our students.
And I just have one quick question for John. You know, when I had been looking at some of the fees at the other sites, you know, Natura's website makes a big point that they charge $500 for driver's ed because it's set by the state. Are we allowed laxity, or is it really set by the state, or is that just something that maybe not 100% accurate?
There's a bylaw, a maximum that you can charge for driver's ed. You can also petition the state to ask for a waiver. I didn't think it was 500. I thought it was 350, which I think is the number that we are at, but perhaps they made a move to 500 and I was unaware of it. If so, you would have to petition the state to do so, to increase it to that number. Otherwise, there is a set, that is one of the fees that is set in statute.
Yeah, I think they imply on their website that that is the fee set, so maybe they did petition and charge more. I was just curious because I think it's great that we charge less because quite honestly, I think, you know, a significant number of students take advantage of it, can't afford to go out on the private side because that's quite an expensive pathway forward. So
I do know. I just happened to sit next to my counterpart from New Trier at a meeting last Thursday, I believe, and we were talking about driver's ed. They get very little to no students in driver's ed. But 500 is still cheaper than private, you're right, because I have one in it right now.
Okay, so I misspoke. We did not increase transportation. We were going back, yeah, we kept it flat. Okay. So we had a motion and a second. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Nemekis?
aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is approval of an amendment to our 403B plan. Could somebody, Mike or Jen, talk to us about why we're doing this?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So this is no cost to the district. This is merely, a paper exchange between us and TCG, who facilitates any of our employee retirement plans. This is not a matching fund of any kind. This is merely one more option available to all of our D115 employees as a post-retirement vehicle. This one happens to be in the form of a 403B Roth. And again, no cost to the district at all.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the amendment to the 403B plan?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve Amendment 1 to the 403B plan.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, questions? May May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have the rejection of 2 sabbatical requests. Mike, could you talk a little bit about the process for petitioning, approving, reviewing sabbaticals?
Yes, we've had 2 requests for sabbaticals. It's a provision within our contract that there is a sabbatical review committee, and that review committee met on each of these, and then that comes to the superintendent after they provide feedback on that, and then the superintendent needs to make a recommendation to the school board. And the school code requires for sabbatical that the district pick up 50% of the cost of the teacher's salary, and then also addresses that the district also must address all of the retirement costs associated with that. And I really appreciate our staff applying for these, and we do not have a provision within our contract that would allow a unpaid time off, which many districts in many parts of our country do. So if a teacher wants to take an unpaid leave, that is not available to them. So this is the vehicle that is available, and when weighing it against all of the other pressures on our district, and the fact we've had a deficit budget for the last 3 years, I was not able to recommend this to you at this time, unfortunately.
The committee recommending this, what's the composition of the committee?
It is 2 of the teaching staff and 1 administrator on that committee.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, the superintendent is recommending rejection of both of the sabbatical requests. So may I have a motion to reject sabbatical request A?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education reject sabbatical request A.
A second?
Second.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions on that? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, may I have a motion to reject sabbatical request B?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education reject sabbatical request B.
May I have a second?
Second?
Any questions or comments on that? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mrs. Carling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is approval of Press Issue 99, the first reading of our policy changes. May I have a motion to approve the first reading of Press Issue 99?
I move that the Lake Forest High School District 115 Board of Education approve the first reading of Press Issue 99.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any comments? Diana shared the one major change related to the oath.
I was a little baffled by some language in section 6.60 that talked about that we would, in each grade, certain things are to be taught in each grade, and I don't know that we're doing this, and I just thought it was strange language. Steroid abuse prevention must be taught in each grade. I can't imagine are we teaching that in each grade? And consumer education must be taught in each grade. I thought they have one requirement for graduation, not, yeah, am I just not understanding that correctly?
Yeah. 6.60?
Curriculum content.
That wasn't the change.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't a new policy. I mean, it's an
Changes were
existing.
down at the bottom, like
Right.
number 14, number 15, and number 16, where some words were,
But it's in there. It's in the first reading. It's a policy we're approving in first reading. It just looked very
You responded
onerous.
to that question about do we teach steroid abuse prevention in each grade in a wellness class or something?
Yeah, so Dr. Hahn provided a couple examples of where we do steroid, teaching of steroid abuse, and that's, I think it was in 2 different grade levels, if I'm not mistaken.
This says every grade.
It says every grade. And this could be a case, so I would take this one, I would go ahead and allow us to review this. This could be a case where the state mandates 50 things, and then we can only do 3. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's any number of those things that occur, and this might just be one of those things in policy. It's like there's a, if you look at the number of bills each year that apply to schools, it's just crazy. There's no way anybody could ever keep up with it.
But are we mandated to put it into our policy? If
Well,
I mean, why do we have a policy if it's just
Right.
all
Well,
pre-mandated?
Right,
well,
We have our own.
right.
but I think the policies are basically based in the state statute and provide
I'm sure they are.
basically the guidebook for us to follow, because the first sentence says, "The curriculum shall contain
Right.
instruction on subjects required by state statute or regulation as follows." So they're all based in, basically, I think the people at press spend the time reading the state statutes and trying to delineate it.
Yes.
And then clean up the handbook so that we're in compliance with the state. So there's a little lag at times, but I mean, essentially, these are all state law that
Right.
our policy book is amended to reflect changes in state law, essentially.
But then we're not abiding by this. We are not teaching consumer education in every grade, in each grade.
So that's a theoretical different question than the press reading. That would be more a question of instruction.
Right.
Right.
I'd say let us come back to you next month on this one.
Can I just chime in really quick?
Sure.
I would just like to, I think it's going to be important to gain clarification on whether it's being taught every grade or that all of our students have access to this information and so our students can take consumer ed requirements throughout 9 through 12. So is it access to, and to fulfill a consumer ed graduation requirement, that all of our kids have access to that, or that they have to take it every single year? Because I think that's a different type of conversation, probably for every district.
It's just,
And the motion to allow you to review that, whether it's required or we allow access.
okay, yeah, because this is just the first reading, so
Yeah.
we'll get another shot
I
at
was
it.
going to say, I mean, if it's the policy, I mean, I think if the press is the policy, it's the policy. Whether or not we're doing it is a separate question, is my understanding of.
But this is a question of interpretation. What does this mean in each grade? Does it mean that students can access it in each grade, or does it mean students must have this curriculum in each grade? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm just saying it wouldn't affect what we're voting on, because if this is the state statute and this is what we're required to do, whether we're
Still
doing
me-
it or not, or whether we're meeting it is a different question.
Yeah, but press may even allow us to amend it to mirror what we're actually doing. I mean, they're just probably copying what. Or we have to, yeah. Okay, so you got that, Janice, or sort of? Okay. So may I have a roll call vote on the amended motion?
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye, as amended.
Mrs. Kreiling?
I as amended.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next is our Human Resources Report. There was quite a bit on there this month. May I have a motion to approve the HR report as presented?
I move that the Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the Human Resources Report as presented.
Second?
Second.
Any questions, comments? Okay. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Kreiling?
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. I'll remind all of us that anybody can request that we remove any one of the items. So may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items, including approval of disbursements, payrolls, and financial statements for November and December 2018, acceptance of our FY18 audit and audited financial statements, which was provided in hard copy at your place, acknowledgement of the Chute Grennan donation for transition program, minutes of the regular meeting and workshop from December 3rd, 2018, and minutes of an executive session from December 3rd, 2018. Minutes of a special board meeting from January 24th, 2019, minutes of the executive session from January 24th, 2019, and disposal of audio recordings from February 6th and the 13th from 2017.
I move Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Davis? Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Dr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Kryling?
Aye.
Mr. Markison?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Dr. Nemekis?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We had 5 commercial FOIA requests this month, and they are all complete. One was from Local Labs, one was from Brad Roycola, one was from the Washington Post, one was from the DeWald Law Group, and one was from the Illinois Retired Teachers Association. A few announcements that have most of which have already been covered. Friday, February 15th is an Institute Day, no school for students. The 18th is President's Day, no school. The Talent Show, we've already talked about, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd at the RMA. Monday, March 4th is a makeup day for one of the emergency days, so school will be in session on March 4th. March 7th is the band and orchestra concert at 7:30 at the RMA. SAT exams on Saturday, March 9th at 8 a.m. at the high school, and our next Board of Education meeting is Monday, March 11th at 7 p.m. right here, same place. So may I have a motion to adjourn the Lake Forest Community High School Board meeting?
Reese, can I say one quick thing?
Sure.
The Lake Forest Scout hockey team has made it into the second round of the playoffs, play Loyola at home. I know it's late Thursday at 9:15 at the college, but if anyone's in the neighborhood wants to drop by, it's always a lot of fun. I think they are now, I know they had no choice with scheduling, but I think technically now they're either somewhere between 12th and 14th ranked in state. Wow. So it's the best team we've had in a very long time, and they're a lot of fun to watch. So I encourage everyone to come out if you want to come.
9:15 on Valentine's Day. Okay, we'll be there.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.